Alright, welcome. This will be video one of the series for Parli this summer, just to practice or to study for. This video we're just going to go over the basics of what Parli is. Well, by definition, Parli is a set of rules, ethics, and customs governing meetings of organizations and legislative bodies. What that basically means is that Parli would be used to conduct meetings, to run meetings, and ensure that the voices of everyone is heard via voting, debate, etc. It also protects absences by uh, having a quorum where there's a minimum amount of members that need to be present for business to actually be conducted, or it just protects minorities where certain motions require a higher vote. So it's more or less a system in which protects those minorities, but also allows the flow of business in an effective manner. How can we apply Parli? Well, as you have probably seen in our chapter meetings, Parli has been used to do motions, used to conduct business, such as adjourning the meeting, calling the meeting to order, reading the treasury report, or approving previous minutes. All of those are demonstrations of Parli and their various applications. And in this case, for Parli as a competitive event, we're going to be utilizing all of this. So, what is Parli in its competitive nature? Parliamentary procedure, in its competitive nature, involves knowing the motions, how to make them, general information about Parli, when you can debate, voting, how to get recognition from the chair, what bylaws are. There's a lot to cover, right? This is more or less an introduction as the first video, so we won't be going too in depth. So what might it look like at regionals? So at regionals, it's actually quite simple. The Parli, it's just a test. So it's about a 100-question test, 50 minutes, just the standard FBLA test, but it does come from, but it does have two compositions, right? That is 20% of the knowledge would be bylaws, 80% would be Parli law. And that is actually important, as before we go to regionals, we will definitely focus on bylaws. And it's not just bylaws as a whole, it's FBLA bylaws, including the corporate and high school bylaws. So that is definitely something we will work on, but for Parli side, it's not as important, as it only makes up about 20%. So, okay, we have that done, but what does state look like? Now, state is a little different. As state within the event, there's the prelims and the finals. The prelims consist of a test, while the finals consist of the actual role play. And the role play is rather interesting. So you'll receive a scenario as per any role play, but you go into this booth, your team of 4 or 5, and the order actually matters. So you're going to go into that room. There's going to be a table. There's going to be a chair at the very end, and then there's going to be 2 on each side, and then the 2 or 3 judges. They will provide you with chairs for every member. Generally, you don't want the chair or the actual chair to not sit in the chair, as funny as that might be, but just that's something kind of to avoid. Um, Something else is that you want your secretary to be as close to the chair as possible, as that is just the standard proceeding of assignments, or just how it usually flows. That's probably something you might get dock points off from, but it's not a necessity. So generally, it's a role play. Uh, I believe we get about 10 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes preparation, 10 minutes of presentation. From last year, it wasn't too difficult, but there was definitely something we didn't know, especially with the fixed time at which to adjourn or fixed time at which to adjourn. So there's some nuances there. When it doesn't come to the scenario, we will focus on that before state. It's pretty broad, right? You do have to make the motions yourself. For example, if it's make a main motion and then amend it, it could be, I move to spend $1,000 at tithes for SBLC conference. I move to amend by striking 1,000 and inserting 200. I mean, we do a lot of practice, so it shouldn't be that difficult. And the nationals look the same as state, right? I only assume that there might be another roleplay for prelims, but I don't think so. The usefulness of parliamentary procedure is rather high, as it protects those minorities and people who may be absent. But something else it also does is the presiding officer, or the chair, does not have a say in what happens, per se, unless it is the chair making a ruling. But besides that, the chair will remain impartial. Therefore, if I am the chair, right, and I may know something, or if I'm the chair, I make the final rule, I'm not going to add bias. It's up to the assembly. So it removes any potential, hierarchy of power or whatever else may come from that. Lastly, how is parliamentary procedure incorporated into these? Well, parliamentary procedure is not just incorporated into meetings, right? It's incorporated into general societies, legislative bodies, the Senate, government. I mean, it applies to about anything. There's many forms and applications of Parli, but in a general sense, chapter meetings or an organization uses the bare bones of it. It doesn't go too in depth as it doesn't really need to. That stuff generally stays to competitions, except in a few scenarios where it might be corporate related. Besides that, it definitely is incorporated into many organizations and bylaws. If you are an organization and you're unsure if you actually use Parli, you can always look into your bylaws or constitution, and if it is following Robert's rules, it will explicitly state. So that is one way to check. Well, thank you for listening and watching to episode 1. That will conclude the introduction. Next episode, we'll go over the motions and how we can make them. Thank you.